Hello folks, you must have understood briefly how to look at the company and the company businesses. Also what qualities an investor should possess, and I am pretty sure that you must be working on them practically because behavior is everything. It defines your personality, your temperament and how you respond to the situation. Now let's dive on what type of businesses one must invest in. One should always look at invest in simple and understandable businesses with consistent earnings history and showing good returns on equity with little debt, run by competent management and most important, must be available at the attractive price. It makes no sense to invest in a company or business you don't understand because you won't be able to figure out what it's worth or what it is doing. One should have a reasonable idea about the company's operating functions like products and services, labor relations with the management, raw material expenses, plant and machinery, inventories, receivables, capital reinvestment requirement, and working capital needs, and many other factors. If you have invested in a share of a company which you do not understand, it is impossible to interpret developments and therefore impossible to make wise decisions. Invest in your circle of competence means a circle in which you are competent enough to understand those businesses and define the decision-based tools. If you want extraordinary results, do it in a simple way but do it exceptionally well. Choose companies which have long track record of stable performance, as those companies will have stable stock price than a company whose growth chart shows sharp gains and losses. Most people remain focused on price at which the stock trades rather than knowing the businesses of that stock. It is important to understand the business in which a company operates and then the price, because bad business can destroy the balance sheet whereas a good business can build the balance sheet. While investing in a stock, you have to ask two questions with yourself. The first question you need to ask is, does the company have an economic moat? And the second question is, how long will the moat last? What is economic moat? Economic moat is the term concept by Warren Buffett, which means deep, wide ditch surrounding by a castle, fort, or a town typically filled with water and intended as a defense against attack. You can see from the image, it all describes what is the economic moat. The castle is a company and the river is a moat. So if one has to go to the castle, he has to pass through the river. But there is no bridge. So it means he has to swim and go to the castle. If one does not know how to swim, it's very difficult to reach the castle. So the moat acts as a defense against the competitors which the company holds for a long period of time, and that separates the strong companies from the weak companies. Obviously, you will buy a company that will be a winner because it will continue to grow for decades in the future. If you cannot predict with high degree of certainty that it will be a winner, then its future is not predictable. So don't buy a company with a certain future. A company to have a predictable future will have an economic moat or an entry barrier, you can say in a simple terms, so that no other company can outrun it over a long period of time. The idea of moat is very simple. If an industry looks it's very easy for any new player to get into, then there is no moat in that industry. On the other hand, it looks really hard for any new player to make an entry and be successful, then it means moat is there in that industry. If a company has economic moat or entry barriers, it means the said company has an advantage over other companies to grow rapidly, earn higher profits, and rewards its owners as well as shareholders. If a company has an entry barrier, then it becomes very difficult for other companies to enter into similar businesses. Entry barrier means a company can command price premium of its products and services because it restricts the competition from getting into to sell at a lower price. You can see from the slide, there are many types of entry barriers. First is brand loyalty. Customers' attachment to certain products like Thumbs Up, Pepsi, Colgate. A product becomes a brand after years of customer experience. High product recall is there. If the brand had hit the customer's mind, it spreads like fire through word of mouth because advertisement required is very less. Example, people say Maggi in place of noodles. We say Colgate in place of toothpaste, or even Xerox in place of photocopy. And these brands have captured the people's mind. So we forget the usual terms and recall the brand terms. Second is government licenses and patent. These are the rights given by the government to the company to develop a certain product or service, as no other company or person can produce it without permission of that person or the company who has the patent of that product. If a company or anyone uses the patent illegally, then the person holding the patent can sue or file against that person or the company, and in most cases the copycats end up losing. These are intangible assets, means the patents are the property of the company but no one can touch them. That's why they are called intangible assets. Example, players in an telecom industry like Airtel have benefit from this type of entry barrier, as only limited number of licenses are issued, which limits the competition. Similarly, ITC, as it manufactures bidis and cigarettes. Third entry barrier is low cost of production. Companies whose production cost is low have the power to sell at a lower price, as they have the edge over other companies to stay economically viable at all times and earn maximum profits on return. Example, Tata Steel is one of the lowest cost steel makers in the world, as it has managed to keep its cost low by having access to its own mines, which means it does not have to depend on other sources. Fourth is large capital expenditure. Capital expenditure means heavy investment in plants and machineries. Steel and construction companies require heavy investment in plant and machinery, but it does not mean all the steel and construction companies have entry barriers. So we have to see other factors into play, like return on equity, return on capital employed, whether is a company generating returns on its investments or not. So it's not just the entry barrier, but has to look for other factors as well. And lastly is the distribution network. One should focus on companies that sell items of repeated use. Example, cigarettes, shampoos, toothpaste, which we use on daily basis, where customers and we purchase this item repeatedly. We can think of companies like Maruti, ITC, Dabur, Asian Paints, as these companies produce these items and have a strong distribution network too. Now we come to the second question, how long will the moat last? You have to think this question in two dimensions, deep moat and a wide moat. Deep moat means how much money the company can make, and wide moat means how long the company can sustain above average profits. Technology companies like Infosys have deep moats than wide moats because they generate large amounts of profits for a short period of time until a competitor builds a better product. Franchisee companies like Domino's or McDonald's have wide moats because it had solid franchises, and yet its excess returns are likely to be there for quite a long period of time. There is no thing as permanent moat. Companies which have powerful moats today like Maruti, Nestle, ITC can decline and disappear in the near future if the company's moats are not strong enough to compete with its peers. We have to make a decision based on our understanding. How long will the company moat will last? Be it few years or several years or a long period of years, which all depends on the company's competency and the industry it operates in. Also, one has to investigate the industry in which company operates. First, get a rough sense of the industry. Are sales for the companies in that particular industry decreasing or increasing? Is the demand in the industry seasonal? How profitable is the average firm in the industry? Are operating margins less than 10% or greater than 50% return? Is the industry dominated by large players or all the firms roughly the same size? How do we know when a business had a hidden moat? The answer is usually visible by looking at the company's financial statements. Good businesses with strong moats generate high returns on the invested capital. The balance sheet tells us the amount of capital deployed in the business. The income and cash flow tells us how much the earnings are from that capital. Now I'll give you an example. Suppose a company like Haldiram opens a namkeen shop that costs rupees 2 crores in investment, and the shop generates 70 lakhs in sales every year. It's a damn good business. Every 3 years, it can take that cash flow and open another Haldiram shop. When it starts franchising, the return on investment is much higher. An easy way to do this is to look at the list of companies in the industry and research on filters based on sales, market cap, and then get a feel of the industry. You don't need to do a detailed analysis at this point of time. Just glance over sales, earnings growth, and margins. The most important thing to look is to look for a variety of firms over a long time frame, say at least 5 years and preferably 10 years. Which company to pick in the industry? That can be attained when you do valuation. Valuation helps pick the best company to invest among all the other rest competitors in the said industry, and at right point of time, at right price. Company analysis with share valuation is a long process which involves hours of dedicated work, which I will explain in gold level, that is level 2. Today we have completed the day 2 videos. Go through the videos once again, as it will etch in your mind what factors to look for in analyzing the economy and the business. Tomorrow we move on to day 3. Have a resourceful day. Bye.